Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, Babel. I've never been good at saying gibberish, even despite whatever it sounds like every time we record these podcasts. Babel on It's All Been Tricked Before. DS9 on It's All Been Tricked Before. Where you can babble with us, where we do a lot of babbling, is on our Facebook page. It's All Been Tricked Before. It's spelled just like it sounds. It's All Been Tricked Before on Facebook. Come out there, interact with us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. And, funny stuff. It makes me laugh. And I'm part of this. Facebook, It's All Been Tricked Before. And this is Babel on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk about the Deep Space Nine episode, Babel, First Impressions.
I am glad that I didn't read the synopsis before watching it, apparently. This is going to be often be the case for season 1 and probably season 2. I'm going to have some vague recollection of having watched something about it, but I don't really quite remember it until we get into it. I liked the way, for the setup, I think it was mostly before the cold open. I just wrote, I could watch an entire episode of O'Brien doing IT problems, essentially, or just kind of a day in the life of that. And and there actually was something more specific going on with it. And it tied in pretty well, I thought. So
this makes me think of, how much we've heard that season 1 isn't that great or whatever. Just it felt like, it's the space sickness of the week. But I thought we got into some fun stuff and some character development here.
Yep.
Not as much as I would have liked or whatever, but I still thought overall it was above replacement level sickness of the week episodes. So yeah, I thought there was some interesting fun stuff.
I thought, to that point, I think it advanced some of the continuity.
Mm-hmm.
It still broadened the world, tied it back into the long-running theme of the Cardassian occupation and the Joran rebellion. And I hadn't really thought about it before until you just mentioned that, but or until I guess I started talking about it. The way that some of the past episodes have been muddying the waters between, I guess you can't really use the word villainous, but maybe destructive. Each side was in the conflict, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just like I guess how a lot of their dangers are coming from the leftover animosity from the Bajorans, more so than the Cardassians just looming around. As there's usually end up being more the red herring.
Mm-hmm. Well, detail, keep power together, white colors. Little. That's why.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I didn't think of that.
I had to look up a screen with random words because my brain wasn't going to work that fast. No, my first impression, I guess, was that it was time in this series for the disease episode, but the Naked Time or the Naked Now were a little too zany for Deep Space Nine, so they went darker and more confusing and technical and a little bit less fun, but they found ways to put some fun into it, especially with their alien characters, Kira and Odo and Quark had some really fun things in it. Yeah. I do want to know where O'Brien's wife is as he's laying dying. Yes. But other than that, I thought it was a decent mystery, a good enough episode. Certainly not the top of my favorites, but I enjoyed it. Yeah,
I'm going to say that maybe they were probably being careful for quarantine, and he wouldn't have wanted her to be there.
That's makes sense.
But Cisco came and saw Jake. I guess they have a kid to worry about. Keiko has to stay healthy for Molly.
Yep.
Still seems weak sauce. She can come in an environmental suit,
And there are some fun things about the way that this, really any pandemic-related episode or endemic, or however this would be categorized, anytime anything like that comes up now, it is just, it's so much fun to compare. How did we behave in similar situations? We being this country or us particular. And that's going to come back to a theme that comes up pretty quickly. Or the one that I was mentioning last week. Quark brings up the point because Odo comes out and says, "Hey, why isn't this place closed down? This is an essential service. People go insane if they didn't have this." And I think he was probably kind of right in certain ways under the circumstances there.
I wrote down Quark is against lockdowns and mask mandates.
I mean, our grocery stores demanded to be first respond, for our essential workers.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They don't have a grocery store in Deep Space Nine, so I guess the restaurant has to be, even though, man, the irony that he ended up spreading it to everybody else.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I guess it would be irony in a sense, certainly because he was saying this is what's going to save them, and it didn't. And it actually made things worse, but it also parallels the way things worked here when something else plays out.
Plus, he was one of the last two that never got sick.
Also ironic, I guess.
And then when they said it mutated, I was like, this is too close for comfort.
It's airborne.
Wait till season 3 when we get the Omicron variant of Babel. That's
awesome.
I'm kidding, obviously. This plot does not come back.
So is the title of the episode a play on babbling, or is it like Journey to Babel?
Well, like the Tower of Babel. Communication languages, and so
yeah. That's why in Hitchhiker's Guide it's the Babel fish. Mm-hmm. The Tower of Babel is that old famous biblical story where all the languages and communication comes together. We start with O'Brien's very busy day, where he has to personally fix every system on the station because apparently he doesn't have a team of engineers.
I thought that was going to be the whole episode, and I wrote down maybe they should get him some more help because everyone's complaining. It's like, seriously, he's the only one.
Yeah,
I thought that inadvertently, and again, that was a good point to bring up because it made me think of this. They did sort of a show not tell thing with Dax. Certainly, you have competent people, even if you did have a team of engineers, but there's only one O'Brien in that sense, or there's only one chief in the sense that's going to be able to go into the high level stuff because I guess there's some really complicated things that are wrong. Or complicated issues that are sort of cascading around, and he is tier 3 support, so they just have to keep escalating things to him until they can fix it. So
it also made me think of we're on yet another community rewatch, which is just community watch. There's the episode where I think it's the custodians are like, oh yeah, we'll put that on their list. Well, when will that happen? About 4 months from now. That's what O'Brien needs to tell these people. It's like, okay, is it a priority? Okay, I'll get to it in 2 months. But these people their demands are unrealistic. But maybe he just needs to tell them that. But he's a hard worker.
You thought their demands were unreasonable in the circumstances, really?
I mean, it seemed like he wasn't sleeping at all.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I guess their expectations of him.
Their expectations were.
And of him in particular, yes. I don't know what you would do about that. It's just.
So this episode has 2 references to Ren and Stimpy. Whether you noticed, the Bajoran was Sormak Ren, named after the character of Ren and Stimpy, and the Cardassian Gaul was Spumco, named after.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
right past.
A third Ren and Stimpy movie episode reference will appear in 2 episodes down the line, where there's a planet Hoek or Heck, whatever Ren's last name is.
That's Ren's last name. Yeah, Hoek.
Yeah, apparently. Ira Stephen Burr made the writers watch episodes of Ren and Stimpy, so they put stuff in. It was on their brain.
This isn't quite a Space Madness episode, but it kind of is.
Did they explain why he did that?
He said, according to what I'm reading right here, he was trying to improve relations between the writers. I don't know.
Oh, it's like a team building exercise. Hey, guys, why don't you watch these things together?
Yeah. Give them something to talk about. As O'Brien's working, we are introduced to this freighter captain, Jahil, played by Jack Kaler, and he just wants to leave. And O'Brien's like, well, we'll get to you, but I've got a bazillion other things to do. Jack Keller is best known for Men in Black 2, Lost Highway, Fever Pitch, and Last Boy Scout. He has 173 credits. More recently, he did a 6-episode arc on The Man in the High Castle. So he's been around. This is his only Star Trek credit, though.
It's going back to, and it's going to be hard not to do this again. Comparing it to our pandemic, which is now thankfully concluded. Essentially represented small business owners in a way, and being affected by these lockdowns, or he has something that would be
his cargo was going to expire.
Fairly catastrophic to him personally or his business. And it seems like something that I would want to try to make some sort of special compensation for. But what can you do? I mean, as it turned out, Cisco was right to make him wait, because who knows how things were going.
Right.
It's possible that maybe he would have gotten away before it aerosolized and he would have been infected, but maybe it had already happened. Who knows? And he could have just infected the rest of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah. So O'Brien has a real bad attitude towards Cisco. I guess Cisco's just the last straw that broke the camel's back when he's like, "Oh, this coffee." I liked seeing the new Jeffries tube that O'Brien climbed into. Looks different than the ones on Federation starships. Nice.
Maybe they have a different name for them, and you think they probably have to for Kardashian ships, right?
I mean, they're named after Matt Jeffries, a 1960s designer, so I assume.
Yeah, of course. He was that significant that the Kardashians were like, "Hey, you know that guy from Earth?" That
you've never appreciated Matt Jeffries, so you've read him in the original Kardashian.
Wow.
I did wonder as the replicator was working, what happens if you reach into the replicator as it's replicating? Like if you put your hand in the middle of the cup of coffee as it's half materialized, would your hand be like stuck in it or cut off? Or is there a force field that we just don't see until it's safe to put your hand in because nobody ever tries it? Maybe
it's just a safety thing that kids learn, by putting their hands in light sockets or something. They're equivalent of that, maybe. I don't know.
I would imagine somebody did it, and so now you cannot do it, but it did happen early on.
At some point, right?
That seems reasonable too.
We get a great scene of Odo harassing Quark. And it makes Quark sympathetic and you feel sorry for him because Odo's really being a bully. But I did appreciate that then somebody else harasses Quark and Odo steps in and he's like, "Nah, you're done." Like, he's the big brother. Only he's allowed to pick on the little brother.
Right.
Or the little brother. Only he's allowed to pick on the big brother. Either way.
I really like that, or I thought I couldn't help but think of an extension of what we liked in the previous episode or episodes, where especially that whole thing of like, hey, maybe I could join your crew since I don't have a job, and that little thing that passes between that kind of, you almost got me. It's that kind of protectiveness of I don't want to see you. We don't have to get into all that, but there's just something about that relationship that we're seeing further, but also it almost seemed to me that Odo was tipping him off in a couple of places where it's like, hey, I know your replicators don't work, but by the way, there's some that work, on our levels.
I mean, Quark had to hack the computer to figure out where the working replicators were, so I'm not sure he was trying to tip him off. I think maybe he was rubbing it in.
That could have been it. But then Odo did say later, you could have just asked. And maybe he could have.
I think Odo would have loved saying no to that request. Absolutely. Their relationship and their dynamic is great. And they're the two that were on the station before the Federation took over. So they have history that predates the series.
Right.
So, I enjoy it.
I want to pause there for a moment because, I mean, do you really think that no one in Starfleet or whoever would be sort of the committee in charge would have approved something like that? Because it seems like, later, as I said, Quark made a pretty good point about it being an essential business by our standards.
I think Sisko would have approved it if the request got to him. I don't know the request would get to him. I think first Quark would have to go through Odo, and Odo would say no, and then maybe Quark would find a way to get to Sisko, and Sisko would say yes.
I don't know. I don't know if he would. Again, I don't know if Odo would be that petty under the circumstances.
Yes, he would. Odo's super petty, especially when it comes to Quark.
It might still be too early.
I mean, I do think deep down they care about one another, but Odo does not treat him well. Right. I think Quark is nicer to Odo than Odo is to Quark. But anyway.
I suppose.
So in this episode, especially really early on, when like O'Brien's the first one that babbles, the immediate reaction from the first sentence of nonsense is horror and shock. And I'm like, so no one ever mishears anything in the 24th century? That maybe I just misheard what he said? Let me ask again before I panic?
Are you sure? Because so there was, we saw the first hint of it when he was talking to Sisko. Yeah. It was like, I was actually unsure myself. Did I mishear something?
Yeah.
When he was like, hey, come again. He's like, oh, da, 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 da. It's like, huh. And Sisko seemed amused. There was like a slight bit of confusion. And again, I thought, wait, did I? Oh, maybe something's wrong with me.
Well, I think maybe they thought the same thing. Like, oh, this guy's just so tired that he's just literally babbling. And I thought that too, because I still thought we were on O'Brien's day, like the day to day. But and then I also wrote down, is he speaking Dharmakian? Thought that.
I love that.
Darmok and Jalad can't replicate. Darmok and Jalad. Pudding false.
But I think that that was a good misdirect in a way as well. Us following O'Brien for that long, and you're it's almost like that an episode of House or something where you were meant to assume that it's just him, is just in his head until they. So that's why, my God, like putting even the word virus in the synopsis was like, wow, that's just.
It's really good world building to see just how bad a shape the station's in and what the challenges they have taking over this. I mean, it's going to take a while to get this station in good working order. We're not going to get there quickly. I mean, the show goes on long enough, you'll see it, but yeah. We get a scene where Kira and Dax are walking past Quarks, and Quark kind of sleazily invites them in, and Kira's like, hell no, I'm out. But I really love this glimpse of Dax, and we'll get to see more and more about her, of just how non-judgmental she is and how down for going along with the flow she is, that she takes him up on his offer and goes inside. And that is extremely Dax. That is the way Dax will behave 6 seasons from now. So it just is nice to see those hints of the character so early on.
Yeah, that was another one of those, I thought, one of the interesting little insights thrown in or developments thrown into the episode that made me sit up and be like, oh, okay, where are we going here? And I will say that before we got into the halfway through the episode, it's like, okay, we need to figure out how they're going to solve this. I thought, oh, this thing is going a lot of different ways. And, it gets back to that thing we've been talking about up until watching this now, finally. Well, now it's serialized and we see these developments a lot more through the episodes. So.
Oh, yeah, so much more than Next Gen, for sure.
But also that little character bit, and, I think a lot of people can probably relate to it, appreciating the novelty of becoming a woman again. For this purpose. And I'm not saying just like people who are women would understand it, but I'm just saying, like, even when you're having a good day, when you're maybe you've lost some weight, maybe some other recent changes made you feel good about yourself, something like that, and just kind of going out and being able to appreciate that kind of attention. So
everyone has those moments of like, today's my day or whatever, things are going my way. At the end of the day, liking the attention kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, she's also an attractive woman in this setting.
Exactly. Yeah,
and those sorts of things probably will never really go away.
Is there in truth no beauty? Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think Dax is just a character where she's not immediately discussed. She's not as judgmental as other characters. So other characters like, ew, gross Ferengis, and she's like, nah, I don't know him individually. Let me go. Let me give him a chance. I'm not going to just dismiss him out of hand. And then even once she finds out, like, the less nice parts of his personality, she's like, yeah, but that's not all the parts of his personality. Like, she believes in the complexity.
In this episode, or you're just saying in general with it?
In general, I just feel like she's not judgmental, and she takes things as complex.
Well, no, I mean about Quark in particular, like Ferengi, you were saying, like the.
Yeah, I think she's down to hang out with Ferengi.
I guess I missed something in the episode, but well, I mean, I guess my take on it was that it was more the party overall, that she didn't mind being there and wasn't repelled by the invitation having come from Quark in particular.
I think I was adding context from future episodes into it and what I know about her character, for sure.
Do we think it's because Dax is older, that they have more wisdom?
Probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
They're not as fazed by things, not as bothered. They just don't give a crap anymore.
Yeah, and they're not in a hurry. They're not in a hurry because whatever.
It occurred to me around this part of the episode, how hard was it for Cole Meany to learn these lines? Because he wasn't just spouting gibberish; he was spouting written lines. The writer, this was a story by Ira Stephen Burr and Sally Caves. Ira Stephen Burr, one of the head people of the show. Sally Caves has only 2 writing credits on IMDb, only 2 credits at all on IMDb. Story by this episode, and she also wrote the Next Gen episode, Hollow Pursuits, which was Barclay addicted to the holodeck. So then it was actually written, though, by Michael McGreevy and Naren Shekar. We're so early in this series, I don't think we've talked about either one of them yet, but I can tell you Naren Shekar is one of their major people in the early days of DS9 that sticks around. He actually has 2 episodes written by him, including this one, but he also wrote an episode of Voyager and 29 episodes of Next Gen. He didn't write 29 episodes. He was a story editor on Next Gen. So he'd been around Star Trek for a while and would continue to serve as a story editor on Next Gen through its final season. Michael McGreevy, on the other hand, looks like IMDb considers him primarily an actor. He has 46 acting credits, 15 writing credits. This is his only Trek writing credit. But he mentioned in an interview that to write this gibberish, what he did was write the lines as they should be, and then replace each word. Like when the actors got the script, the real words were in parentheses, so they'd understand the meaning of the line.
Oh,
man, how hard would it be to memorize nonsense words, though?
Well, you made me think of this as you were bringing this up. As an actor myself, and I'm sure that Stephen has some perspectives on these as well. Things I started like realizing, I guess, more this year. In fact, sometimes when you have lines that are so out there, they're more memorable than something that's like a bland kind of. You almost remember like the paraphrase meaning of it rather than the if something strikes you as being that strange. Because
as a director or as an actor, that would have been the way I would have approached it. So the fact that the writer was like, "This is the way I'm going to throw it," I would approach it like, I know I'm saying gibberish, but I need to find the intent. And you could tell the actors did.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
The writer provided that, so that's helpful. But still, I think it's telling that after 15 minutes, they let Cole Meany just lie there the rest of the episode, because to memorize the whole episode's worth would be impossible.
Right. I certainly don't have any experience as far as like being in a TV series. So sometimes I wonder about that for memorizing lines. What's the turnaround time?
Depends.
Like how off or how much time do they devote to being able to just take multiple takes? Just like, okay, here's this scene. You can concentrate on memorizing just these lines for this scene. Go.
Well,
I mess up. Yeah. So
the other thing I would have thought about with this is, would it matter as long as they were saying words with the right intent?
That too.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a reason, because early on I thought, oh, they can decipher this. They can send it in. But I liked it better that they're like, no, there's no key here. It's just so random that they can't figure it out, in which case would make me think that the writer was like, here's some words for you to use. And if you end up, if I'm the director coming in, I'm like, I don't care. You give me the intent. I don't care if you get the right words, because this guy, one, he's not on set. If he is, I'm throwing him off. But no, so I'm very curious about that.
I think on TV, it's more common for the writers to be on set, but this was one of our regular directors, Paul Lynch. I think it would be harder to just come up and pull nonsense words out of the air than it would be to memorize the nonsense words given to you. Yeah.
There's a improv game that's called Gibberish that a lot of people are really good at, and I am just not good at it. There's some improv I'm good at, but it's essentially, there are actually several games where you talk gibberish, and I've just never gotten good at that. Never been good at it.
Yeah, no, because you're trying to hold two things in your head at once. You're trying to hold the real meaning and the gibberish, and that's just...
Yeah. My thought was, if you did a mind meld, could you get to the actual thought?
I don't know. I don't think we've seen any Vulcans on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. but if one was in the neighborhood...
But so we've seen, I think, similar applications in other situations, and I love that you brought that up. Actually, just when you have a couple of characters, or a couple of different species that can't use words in that way. Well, the Hordak, right? Is that the pain the
Horda?
Horda. Would he have absorbed the intent and translated automatically, or would he have gotten the gibberish for that? And there are certain, like the translators, universal translators, that you would think should get around that in the sense of expressing the intent rather than the actual word.
So we get the meeting scene in the middle of Ops. How much more urgency does it lend to Deep Space Nine that they don't have that separate observation lounge they go to meet? It's right in the middle of Ops. Like if the Enterprise D bridge had a table in the middle where they had their urgent meetings, it's the similar. I kind of like that. I like that aspect. I don't know that we ever see a meeting room on DS9. I feel like that just makes it more present.
Like I said last week, I love the idea that they're just in this cramped space. You can't get a sense of every time I look at the exterior of the station, and now we're getting more and more we get a long look at it at the beginning of every episode. But I don't feel like I know where they are on there or anything. And I like that, but I do know it feels cramped. Like even Quark's area is great. For me is like, it's perfect as a casino connoisseur, not connoisseur, but somebody who loves going to casinos. It's not a Vegas casino with the big high ceilings and everything. It's a I'm going to say this in the pejorative sense. It's more like a Detroit or a Columbus or a Wheeling. It's more like a small casino.
Ops is the top middle part in the very center, but you'll see that big, if you notice on the promenade, there's these big round windows up on the second level, and you can see those on the outside. They're like under ops. The promenade's kind of like just under ops, and we mostly spend our time in that middle tower. We don't go out to the docking rings that much, but the station is huge. It holds way more people than the Enterprise D. Thousands of people live on the station.
Oh wow!
And I'm assuming that the outer ring is more for like moving cargo and stuff, so we don't really spend time there. But just to think of where all the quarters are and stuff, I just recommend looking at a blueprint just so you have a basic idea.
For Deep Space Nine in particular, I keep wanting to bring it up because the first time through, or the first couple of times through probably, it never occurred to me to think about it in the sense of it being different than Starfleet. There being a distinction between Cardassian architecture and Starfleet architecture, and the things it would say about their culture and the purpose of the station itself, and things being utilitarian in a certain way. And every time something like that comes up and I notice it, it's just so much more fun that way, or at least for me. I think it's significant. The other thing is when you have information like that, it makes me wonder at what point do they create those things? Is that something like a prerequisite for the series itself? They had to have everything mapped out for the sake of consistency.
I think in general,
like down to the specs.
Well, for instance, like the promenade, you have to know those windows match the interior and the exterior, so you have to have that kind of thing mapped out before they even build the sets.
That makes sense, true, too. But do you think that they had that sort of attention for original series, like going into the first season or so?
Yeah, really? Gene spent a lot of time on the design of the ship.
Good to know.
So, back to the episode. Quark mentions his assistant Rom, and Odo agrees he's an idiot who couldn't fix a straw, I believe, which is, again, not at all the character of Rom, who's actually a really brilliant engineer. So this is, I guess, early days of them not knowing who the characters were. Rom isn't even seen in this episode, but that is Quark's brother, Nog's father. And even at this point, he's just calling him his assistant. They're not even establishing the family dynamic. So it's still very fluid. That'll settle in. Similarly, Quark talks about an old Ferengi saying, which after this, they'll eventually say the rule of acquisition number whatever. The Ferengis have rules of acquisition. And that's what they'll start using instead of old Ferengi saying.
Nice.
But the one he mentioned in this episode, I didn't write down what it was. That is one of the rules of acquisition they reference later. Is
essentially why ask when you can take.
Yeah.
But which is a more efficient way of saying the other thing, of course, which is better to ask for forgiveness beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yes.
Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven.
Or one of those. But that's exactly the sort of thing that I mean when you catch things like that make me wonder, when do they really have the blueprints locked in for something? Because if you can play that fast and loose with characters, that implies that they still either retcon things or just kind of go, well, that didn't really count.
Yeah, they do. And the rules of acquisition, they just made up a new rule whenever it fit the story. Like even in the book, it only mentions the one seen on screen, and there's plenty of numbers that aren't in the book. You know, so it's they leave themselves that room. But yeah, I think the general blueprint of the station, I feel like you kind of have to know that for storytelling purposes of how long does it take to travel from here to here, what's close to other places. So that seems a little more necessary to have ahead of time. Whereas, with the characters, especially a character like Rom, who wasn't a lead and was kind of an afterthought to the series, but will become pretty important to the series. Yeah, you see those mistakes early on, inconsistencies. Yeah. I just think even if you're super prepared with a big, thick Bible, there's going to be things that come up that just, you can never be completely prepared. We are immediately told it's a Cardassian booby trap, which of course turns out to be a Bajoran booby trap. I like that twist. I thought that was good storytelling.
Yep.
More stuff with Quark. No one could be that. I can't read my own writing, but Odo says something about no one could be that whatever. And Quark's like, I am, which I thought was really funny. Was
calculating or daring or something like that. The idea of his customers.
Devious. I think it says devious.
Yeah. His customers faking the illness to get out of pain.
Yeah. The Quark interrogating patients was whoa. I liked it.
Doing the fake chop speak or whatever. Wouldn't work that way either, though. I mean, it doesn't seem to like they should have their same mental faculties. They should be able to go, okay, here's the money. They can understand. They just can't express.
But I will say that immediately shows you an aspect of DS9 you couldn't have gotten next gen original series, because you never have a crewman going down and asking for their money to a sick patient. So it shows you some of the fun branding of DS9 and the differences.
Although aphasia does actually affect your ability to comprehend language as well. So
yeah.
There, yes, that's one of the distinctions that where Dr. Bashir was sort of saying. It was like, well, it's similar to this thing that we call this, but it's not. Yeah,
right. You're right. He did say it wasn't the same thing. Yeah.
So then they up the stakes. Jake's fallen sick, and we get the worried dad. And now we're told O'Brien's going to be dead in 12 hours, but still his family doesn't come to visit him.
Exactly 12 hours, very conveniently for our purposes.
I appreciated here that Bashir called whoever created the virus a work of genius, or he called the virus a work of genius. Bashir can be a little bit callous sometimes, or take the too science focused, and that is one of those moments that, like you could call the Nazis super efficient, but there's context that's missing there. Right. I guess you can appreciate how they made the trains run on time, but you also need to look at what they were doing with those trains.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not sure if you're saying that it's a positive or negative necessarily, but
both.
I think that's fair. I mean, I really appreciated that. I feel like I can relate to that sort of aspect of a character like that too. The idea of just stepping back and saying, this was a brilliant thing to be able to come up with. I like the puzzle aspect of this thing is brilliant. I don't think that necessarily means that he says that he would admire the person on a personal level, but it's something that still needs to be acknowledged, and you would want to be able to talk to someone who could do this and, perhaps learn something useful.
Yeah, we get another great scene with Odo and Quark where Odo makes Quark responsible for the promenade. It's not quite deputizing him because it's more threatening, but I appreciated that as well. Like, anything happens, I'm blaming you. You're in charge.
I feel like I've seen that threat come up before in certain things, and I think that was very appropriate here. Yeah. I love the effect. So
Bashir falls ill, so now our last hope is Major Kira, and having to track down this guy who apparently just sits by his phone and answers it as soon as it rings.
In the future, people don't do call screening or whatever, and maybe he's got some other important things going on. Maybe she blocked her caller ID. He's like, oh, this might be a customer. I have to answer this. This might be my boss.
She star 71 them. She hit star 71 before she.
So this is Sir Malk Wren, played by Matthew Fazian, best known for Friday the 13th Part 6, Freddy's Dead, Tough Guys, and Sliver. He's got 135 credits. Looks like a lot of horror stuff. This is his only Trek credit, though. His only Trek credit, and no Seinfeld. But yeah, he's your typical Weasley bureaucrat, whatever. That also created a deadly virus at his young age. But
he helped, I guess. Or he claims that he was sort of just in the room when it happened, so to speak.
The room where it happened?
Yes. Nice, thank you. As it was coming out of my mouth, as Meow Meow said, I heard it. It was like, well, it's too late. I know it's going to sound like that. This is bringing me to the other thing that I was thinking about last episode, or rather, the last episode we were recording about, the link between them. We see that coercion somehow works. Taking hostages works. We're seeing the good guys having to do this ploy, and it makes sense in a way, but she just it certainly didn't seem to bother her in the least. Not even a hesitation. It's here we go.
That's who Kira is, and I think we'll see that more and more. I think Starfleet characters would have more hesitation about it. Kira doesn't. Again, a great example of why this series works so well and is different than the other Star Trek. But I did have a little bit of a problem where she's rushing out and Sisko's in her way. And she's just like, move. And she doesn't even take a second to explain the plan. Like, I get that he may not like it and it is their only option. But, he's your commanding officer. Have a quick conversation. Just say, here's what I'm doing. This is what. I don't know. We get a touching scene between Sisko and Jake. I mean, I guess they're both Sisko.
I love this scene. This is one of the scenes in the episode where I'm like, should he be down there? And I'm like, yeah, he should.
He's his dad.
It touched me, yeah.
Single father.
That was another one of the ones that, to me, helped her rise above the virus of the week.
Well, I think this is, again, the character Benjamin Sisko is held up a lot as an example of a single black father showing good parenting skills at a time where we just didn't see that kind of thing on television that much.
Yeah.
I remember the thing I was going to mention before, which I should have. I only have like 2 notes on this one, and the second of which is that I think this is the first episode where I could honestly say the acting was across the board just consistently good. As far as like, it just felt like we've arrived at the point where it's polished, and there's no more of that weird kind of like, that was kind of a stilted read for whatever, and it flowed, and nothing ever really jumped out at me as being awkward. So
nice. We go back to that alien captain causing all sorts of trouble. I almost feel like it was just an unnecessary addition to circumstances, but it worked. So yeah, we get.
Wait, I don't know if Steven was about to say the same thing that I was thinking, but again, we come back to our present circumstances, and I feel like now we would have to have scenes like that to reflect reality.
Yeah,
you're going to have people who are going to like, I don't care what's the consequence of these actions. My business is more important than your whatever else, and this is just a hoax anyway. I'm going to go and do it. You know.
Well, that also kind of these parallel scenes are the trouble is caused by 2 very selfish people here, because we have this captain that's going to explode a large part of the station when he takes off, like we've talked about, for his cargo. At the same time, we've got this Surmak Ren that Kira's kidnapped, that she exposes to the virus, but he is so much more concerned with he's going to get blamed and in trouble for this than saving the people's lives that are dying. So 2 very selfish characters are causing big waves at the same time. I enjoyed the Kira scene on the runabout, but I think I was more entranced by Quark and Odo. Quark saying, you're going to get my bill later. We'll negotiate how much I'm charging for helping. And then Quark teasing Odo. And then Quark, his whole like grabbing his head and scared before it blows up. And Odo being all heroic and saving the day. The whole thing was just really good.
Quark is already more fun than the 70s series we watched. As much as I can pick out elements of that I love, but watching that was a chore. But yeah.
I was going to say he's already, if you only saw Next Gen Ferengi and were super annoyed by them, he's already winning people over.
I have totally come around. Yeah, I've completely come around. I get it. He's fun, he's funny, and yeah.
Well, as they develop Quark and his brother Ram and their nephew and his nephew Nog and his mother Ishka and the Grand Negus that leads the Ferengi people, all of these Ferengi characters come in, and a cousin named Brunt. There's like 6 major Ferengi characters in the series, and they're so good. The Grand Negus is played by Wallace Shawn, so you have that to look forward to.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
The leader of the people, yeah. He does like episodes.
Just want to come back to the Kira pulling the doctor over again. No, so we're back to coercion being the thing that works. Honestly, I was kind of buying it. I thought that this is just some guy who was just an assistant. He doesn't. What could he possibly do? And in a way, it would have been right, but because he was forced to do it to save his own life, suddenly he was like, "Oh, you know what? I can kind of think of this other thing." He didn't know it, but if I, with that much at stake, suddenly he was able to be creative and think outside the box and do all these other things and go, "Oh yeah, I would have. Here's what I would have to do." And it's like he had no incentive to do that until his life was in peril. Yeah, and we saw them using the same technique over just for some reason with Moriarty and Picard and doing all these other things, and it was just sort of a chip to play. They were all cavalier about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I mean, do you have an opinion about that? It's sort of like the 24 thing. It was a great. I really enjoyed the series, but when you start to pick it apart, they are certainly implying that the way to get things done is to threaten people in that sense.
Sure.
And I know we know scientifically speaking, torture is not effective, but I do think if you've been exposed to deadly virus, you might try to cure it. That's not the same thing.
Well, that is certainly realistic. It's a writing trope. Right? It's something you can't really avoid. It's a way to move the story forward.
And then we get the sitcom ending to the episode where Cisco yells at O'Brien again about the coffee. And you almost want to hear like the cheesy 80s music and the freeze frame.
Yep.
I didn't laugh. Was it funny?
No, but it had the makings of a sitcom ending.
Yeah. And
when they cut to O'Brien's face, again, I was, some of the callback was lost on me because I don't think I caught the beginning part of it, but by context, I understood what they were going for immediately.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like O'Brien was giving kind of like the camera, like, ha ha ha, I got him. It seemed like he was just kind of sad and tired, right?
I thought he was going to chuck the cup at Cisco.
Yeah.
And maybe he does after the.
And then that's where the freeze frame would be with Cisco going like this and the cup in the air, like coming at him.
And it hits some innocent person.
Do, 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 do.
Okay, so wait, so I guess what would the correct way to interpret that be that this was not something that O'Brien did as a prank? This was just, another thing coming up again. This other problem hasn't been fixed.
Yeah.
This ship, the station is falling apart around them.
Okay, yeah, that makes the expression make sense then.
I took a couple of fashion notes, but I think the thing is I stopped because there is so much in this series, so many aliens, so many different looks, that I'm not sure it makes sense to keep a regular fashion segment in reviewing DS9. Like, we can still talk about fashion if it stands out.
Steve, we're gonna have to let you go. You're redundant at this point. You're no longer needed.
We can still talk about any fashion you want to if something stands out, but I feel like we could literally spend a half an hour every week talking about the specific designs, and I just don't know that it's necessary.
Well, I think last week we did talk about the woman, the blackjack dealer or whatever dealer at the
2 weeks ago. Yeah, the Dabo table. Last DS9 episode. Yeah.
Yes. So, it'll still show up.
Yeah, I just don't know that we need to look for it every week because we'd be, there's so much. And it kind of blends together. When there's so many different standout looks, none of them stand out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
it reminds me of the meme about, well, I don't know if necessarily a meme, but just the comedic thing about designers and the things they go through. And I think one of the horror stories was somebody saying, I want you to make everything bold. No, I want you to make everything italic or something like that to get to. It's like, but that defeats the purpose of
we could pick 10 characters in every episode to talk about their fashion. It just,
right.
My alternate episode is when Dax did the aphasia. I wanted her to make it a prank. So she was just messing with them all, kind of like Kira. I wrote like Kira. I can't remember what Kira did that was like, I'm just joking later. But in the episode, but similar to that, somebody needed to fake the aphasia and then be like, that wasn't funny. You guys didn't think that was funny.
Every time we say Kira, Star Wars Minute is just wrapping up Solo, a Star Wars story.
They
so
saw
I
it
immediately
from Star
think
Trek.
of Amelia Clark is what I immediately think of. Right.
When I watched that movie and she was introduced, I immediately thought of Kira Nerys. So
there you go. Yeah.
I think of someone I know locally, who I don't know if either of you would have met them or not, but Kira named that.
No.
And also Death Note.
But mine was, I don't know where I was at this point in the episode, but essentially the plot of Liar Liar, Nobody Can Lie. I guess I was definitely on the we have to get into the naked now, the naked time kind of a thing. So nobody can lie. So everyone's going to be, it's really going to amp up the relationships and stuff.
That reminds me of something I wanted to say about one of Jimmy's comments, toward the beginning of the episode. I'm kind of curious to go back into that. So you said now is the time to get into the disease episode. Is that like a legitimate story writing pattern for Star Trek? I've never really thought about it that way.
The naked now and the naked time both occur very early in the first season. So that's where, in fact, I think the naked TNG's episode, the naked now, was that the fourth episode? No, it was the third episode, and this was the fourth episode.
And TOS, I think naked time is the fourth episode. So.
That's
it was the fourth episode. Yeah. So it's a very distinct pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do it in the Discovery?
No, and I don't know that they did it in Voyager. I was just looking at Voyager's first season, and I apologize. Episode 4 of Voyager is called The Phase, where they introduced that deadly disease.
Oh my God.
Except the phage is not something that overtakes the crew in that episode. It's actually a running thing, through multiple seasons of the show.
But still, that's
this pandemic. But episode 3 or 4 is where you got to bring out your disease.
Oh my God. Wait, did you then Universe Journey?
No, I didn't think completely. I waited until episode 6, where we had the salt vampire, the Christmas vampire. Yeah, homesick for the holidays. They got bitten by the Christmas vampire and now got homesick. There you go.
Oh my God!
We did it as episode 6.
I forgot.
But it wasn't like Nick. We still have never done a Naked Now type episode. Maybe we're due. I will say I was looking at Star Trek Enterprise, and I do not see a disease necessarily, but their 4th episode does involve a paranoid fantasies caused by hallucinogenic flowers. So I guess that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, spores.
Oh my God. I mean, do you think they're doing it on purpose? I mean, they almost have to be, right? I mean,
I don't know.
Seems like a natural.
Yeah,
it's like a thesis right there. I mean, you need like seriously go back through like other sci-fi series or what purpose does it serve? Is it consistent? Are they doing it accidentally? Or are they doing it like as a homage, or is it like a textbook thing where you have to do this to do blah blah blah? And just I don't know.
Kind of the space is dangerous kind of thing. Yeah.
Speaking of disease, we didn't mention Nurse Jabara, who was kind of a minor character, was taking care of the sick, played by Anne Gillespie. She's going to play Nurse Jabara in 4 episodes. We previously saw her in an episode of Next Gen as Ensign Hildebrandt, so a different character. But you may know her from, well, it says she's best known for DS9. That was only 4 episodes. She was in Beverly Hills 90210 a lot more. She was in 55 episodes of that and 6 episodes of the 90210 reboot. Or spinoff or continuation, whatever. So she played that character more than 60 times. I don't know why that's not number 1. And she did 140 episodes, 147 episodes of Ryan's Hope back in the early 80s.
Oh, she was also Paris Geller's mom on Gilmore Girls.
Oh, yeah, she was. That was just 1 episode, but you're right.
Yeah, just 1 episode, yeah.
So I think that would make another good thesis for someone.
And she did an episode of Cop Rock.
Oh, well, not the Cop Rock. I mean, it's the... for you budding students out there, because I know there are a lot who are probably listening to this because Reddit has told them to do it.
And the episode of TJ Hooker.
Yeah, also not that part. The idea being that you would try to crack the IMDb algorithm. Like, what are you saying that the most or the best known? Because this doesn't make sense.
She played Jenny Garth's mom, so I should know. Should remember that. Oh. So I have 3 other notes. One was Deacon Elig was the one guy's name, and all I could think of was the rat poison Deacon.
Yeah.
That's why the way I thought it was spelled. I appreciate that dramatic cuts to commercials are still a thing, because there were a lot of them in this episode. So I like that that's still going on. And finally, this cuts against I didn't like the end of I didn't think the end of the episode was funny, even though you guys kind of helped me with that. But at the same time, I still wrote this at one point, which was, maybe they should hire some more help. I said maybe they should hire some more help for O'Brien, but who's doing his work while he's just laying around in sick bay doing nothing?
Nobody was. Nobody was.
I can't believe that. I can't believe the station's even spinning around at that point. So that is my last note.
Whether you intended it or not, that bit, that last bit sounded like it was lifted like right out of a Seinfeld episode, like a couch discussion. Like, who's doing his work? He's just laying around. Like, love it.
Well, those are the notes. Let's get to the rankings. Who is your shady character this week?
I guess. Oh well, I guess the sea captain.
Yeah.
Who was like I also would have been almost would have been Quark because he was being conspicuously shady for the purpose of the episode.
The hero with Jahil?
Yeah.
I think Quark is kind of honest in his shadiness somehow.
True.
His shadiness is delightful.
I'm going with Sumac Ren because I didn't like him and his hanging up on Kira. I don't know anything.
Oh man, that's a good one.
Who is your annoyance this episode?
I mentioned this earlier. It's everyone that complains to O'Brien at any point in the episode.
Actually, I'm gonna have to switch. I would say that Sumac Ren is the shady one, and Jahil is the annoying one.
Okay,
in this.
Fair.
I'm making Kira my annoying one for the second episode, or Keiko for the second episode in a row because her husband's dying and she doesn't even check in on him.
Maybe this didn't show it.
Mm-hmm. I understand Rosalind Chow declined a series regular, which I'm disappointed by, but sometimes it just seems ridiculous when she's not there.
Well, we need to have her on here to scold her about it or say. I know.
I like her. I'm not.
Right. It's something that goes back to something we said a long time ago, which is from our perspective. It's somebody offered us a role in Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever, be like, oh my god, yeah, this is the most important thing ever. Why wouldn't you just like jump at this? It didn't feel like that to them, I'm sure, at the time. So.
No.
Who do you have a drink with this week?
I'm going to feel shallow again for the second straight week, but Dax, just because her talking about wanting the attention and all that, it's like, tell me more about this. So, as I give you more attention. So, yeah.
I'm surprising myself, and Steven's surprising me again, because I just, as soon as he said it, was like, that makes perfect sense. I mean, regardless of whether you're being shallow or not. And, a little bit of that plays into it, I have to admit. But it's just, it makes sense for the episode, I think.
Yeah, she seems like a really fun person to get a drink with. I was considering O'Brien because he had such a rough day, he needs a drink.
Yeah.
I was considering Cork, but he needs to go home and have that drink.
Yeah.
I was considering Cork because I feel bad that Odo keeps picking on him. But yeah, if you want to go out and have a fun drink, I think Dax clearly is the one to have it with this episode. Above or below Emissary?
I'd go below.
Yeah, you almost have to. Below that is A Man Alone.
Above, I'm thinking.
I want to go above. I think this had the Quark Odo stuff really elevated this episode for me. We'll forget in 6 weeks that Odo and Quark had this great stuff that elevated this episode. We're just going to remember O'Brien being sick. But for now, their stuff was gold.
Yeah. For now, live long and prosper. And now there's our ending right there.
Next week, back to the Next Generation. It's an episode called Aquiel. Murderous intrigue abounds to the Enterprise when one of the crew aboard a subspace station is believed dead and suspected to have taken part in it until the Klingons show up. There's
the twist part.
To Geordi's taste. Why this episode summary ends with to Geordi's taste, I cannot explain. I know there's flirtation between them, but that seems unnecessary and a bit ridiculous.
Okay.
Anyway,
that is just
next week.
That is, I cannot believe. I was about to jokingly say, but the twist is that, and the other twist is going to be just.
And then at the end of the episode, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And during the freeze frame, here's the joke: is that.
Until then, live long.
And practice social distancing, wear a mask, get vaccinated and boosted, and prosper.
And always remember to communicate clearly with your partners and your coworkers.
Car, plane, woman, boat,
TV
flag.
person thing.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?
I wanted to look up that bit from Stranger Things season 2, essentially, where you have the list of those words you're trying to communicate.
But if we do that, this is going to turn into a never-ending story because we did go really long.
Yeah.